Let's talk about variables versus styles versus components, because I get this question almost all the time. What are the main differences between them? And when is the best time to use which one in a design system? Let's talk about that. But I want you to remind you that the system will fight you if you do these things wrong. So it's highly, highly important. I'll show you exactly the truth behind these and the differences between styles, components, and variables. Let's start by giving you the most important thing here, which is I want you to memorize this mental model. Okay, you can think of variables equals values, styles equals rules, and components equals structure plus behavior. Simple as that. Each of them solves a different problem. Let's start with variables first. Variables are your foundation. They are raw token level values that are something like colors, spacing, font size, let's say radius, or shadows. Maybe you already heard these terms, something like color.blue 500 or space.8 or radius.m. They will all tell you something, but they do nothing visually. They only encapsulate the value inside. When I think about radius m, that I can think about there is a precise value for a radius, but there are probably like small level, high level, and medium level as well. So what problems does variables solve? Change, control, and scale. Let's think that way. If your brand color change, and if you are retouching 500 different components manually one by one, that's a failure from start. Okay, think about that. So very, very hard rule for variables. If a value appears more than once, it's a variable. Simple as that. Always use variables for something like a value that might change. It can be your logo size. Okay, a value that might change can be a variable. As you may have known, UI is all about being consistent, and we need to think about in a system level thinking. And we should use variables before styles or components as a foundation. Never ever skip that layer. Styles are optional. I would say they are optional bundles. It can be for reusable combinations, something like text styles. It can be your font size, line height, you name it, anything about text size, or color styles, or FX styles, which I would say they are all static. They do not have logic, or very important, they do not have a state. What problem does a style solve? I want to simplify by saying speed and consistency. That's it. And for simple and repeated usage. Think about this. Typography systems, icon colors, background fills that don't change almost all the time by state. But when does styles become dangerous? Let's talk about them, because this is very important. I know I'm saying for everything very important, but this is very important. Think about buttons, inputs, or anything with states. As you may have imagined, buttons have states, something like a hover state, maybe click state, or an active state. Same goes to the inputs as well. What if I click? What reaction it will get? Anything that have a reaction, they should not have a style. They should have a variable instead. Style don't understand the intent. Styles only understand the appearance. Styles are convenience layer, not a system layer. Variables are system layer. Now, let's talk about components. Components are structure and behavior. What I mean by that? Reusable UI with a layout, constraints, states, variants, or interaction logic. This is where your decisions live. You already have decide about these things. This is where components are foundational. What about what problem does components solve? As you all know, UI is all about consistency and consistency of behavior, not just a visual state. What I mean by that, use for anything clickable. Again, a button or input can be a perfect example of a component. With states reused across all other screen sizes, or otherwise your product manager will ask you to change it one by one. What does professional UI designers do? Components should reference styles. Styles reference variable. Components are never hard code values. Padding, for example, you have a button and it has padding, uses spacing variables. It is not simply a number. So I would give you a hierarchy for you to respect. Okay. Always variables, style, components, screen. Do not forget that. Never reverse it. And never skip, never ever skip, and never ever skip layers without knowing why. You can ask on Reddit, you can ask here, or anyone you know, or maybe AI. But just ask why and use this hierarchy almost all the time. I would say non-negotiable. I want to give you a real example, a button text in a dark mode, for instance. You only change the semantic value of the button text default, the mode which updates value. You will change the mode and it will switch the values automatically. The button doesn't change at all. This is what I would say a system thinking, okay? And a very big common mistake about components is overusing components. For instance, headings or titles are not components. You can use something like a text style plus variables. That's totally okay. But don't component everything. Are we good? Another common mistake is underusing variables. If your styles do not reference variables, it is, how would I say, only a cosmetic change. Your styles should reference the variables. So, for instance, if you start with a button without before tokens, you're just designing. It's not a system. And if you ever say like, how do I even start? You can use an open source design system like Google Material Design. And don't worry, I will put a link somewhere in the video that you can check about other design systems which are open source. Also, another clue, name with intent, okay, not appearance. For example, a wrong usage is blue 500. We all know what it is, but it can be a better naming convention if you already give like a primary / default. It has an intent. I can clearly get that this is a primary color and the default state. This is way better than a blue 500. So blue 500 instead can be your foundational level, not a system level. I hope you understand, and don't worry, I will put everything, all these slides on both my LinkedIn, on Instagram, and hope to see you in the next one. Cheers.